Gower back, and Guy McLean from the Westfield Athenaeum is our host this morning. We'll be bringing you some interesting chat over the course of this hour on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, and now Southwick Community Programming as well, and 89.5 FM WSKB. Good morning, Guy. So how have you been?
Very, very good. It's been an active fall, and I've been very busy. The Athenaeum has been very busy. It's been a great time.
Yeah, I notice I follow what's going on in the Athenaeum on Facebook primarily, and you've got one program after another going all the way into the holidays.
Yes, it's amazing. You know, we're scheduling so many programs now. We have so much activity going on that it's hard for me to keep track of it all. Sometimes, we have so many programs that I forget which programs we're having on a particular day. But that's credit to our staff. We've got a bunch of really energetic staff members who are putting together all kinds of programs. Everything for children, for adults, all kinds of different subject areas. So I'm very happy with the way that's going now, because for a long time it was really hard getting, we could only do online programming. Now we're doing a combination of both online programming and programming at the Athenaeum.
So you've been there almost a year.
Yeah.
9 months, I think.
About 9 months now.
About
yes.
9 months. What has surprised you? What did you learn in this 9 months about the Athenaeum that you had no idea about when you started?
Well, one of the things is, you expect the Athenaeum. We're a city of about Westfield's a city of about 40,000, so you have a certain expectation when you come to a library for a city of this size. And one thing that I was very impressed with very quickly is what we're doing at the Athenaeum is really a lot more and a lot more tech savvy, a lot more up to date in terms of online services than many libraries that are a lot larger than the Athenaeum. We're offering really high quality online programming and services. I'll just give one example. We're part of a system called CW Mars. It's a regional, it's Western and Central Massachusetts. All the libraries are all part of one system. So what it means is, if you come to the Athenaeum, you're looking for a particular book. Let's say we don't have it in the collection. We can order it from another library in the region that has it and deliver it. So that's one of the services. But another thing about CW Mars is they provide a lot of electronic books, audio books electronically, and books that you read as an ebook. And CW Mars this last year set a new record. 1.8 million new ebooks were taken out by patrons in Central and Western Massachusetts. But here's the thing about it. The Westfield Athenaeum, of that whole system, the Westfield Athenaeum was one of the top 10 libraries in offering ebooks. You wouldn't expect that, but that's the case, and a lot of it's due to our staff.
I know that you're a big reader. Do you read books or ebooks?
I do both. I do both. I have to say, it's really very convenient to be able to access a book through ebook sources. I actually sometimes read a book on my cell phone because it's very convenient. If you're out, you're at the doctor's office, you're waiting for your appointment, you can pull out, your phone and keep reading your book. But for certain kinds of books, art books, other kinds of books, you really, the ebook format just doesn't work as well as a regular book.
Yeah, because we had the last episode that we did, we had Ben Dunham on, who was talking about etchings and things like that, and that his book is available electronically. And I thought, well, maybe, because I'm listening to audiobooks when I drive now, and maybe I would just put it on my tablet and stuff like that. It's not the same as reading a book.
Yeah, it's really hard with art books especially to get the kind of definition and make it work with the text. The designers of ebooks are getting better and better all the time in dealing with these problems, because they're becoming more and more aware of that difficulty. But for me, if you're reading a novel or you're reading a shorter book or something, ebooks are great, very convenient.
Yeah,
and you could download them easily too. And that's something that libraries offer. But a lot of people don't realize this. people think that public libraries only, the only service we offer is the books in the library, but we offer these ebooks through the library. You don't have to go to Amazon to buy an ebook.
So I could bring after we're done taping, you can drag me back to work. I can bring my tablet, and you can download like Valley of the Dolls onto my tablet.
Absolutely. We don't even have to go back to the building. We don't have to go back to the Athenaeum. We can just do it right here. I can get you all set up.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I don't know about you, but I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. I can't listen to too much music when I drive because it distracts me completely. But there's something about an audiobook with somebody reading or narrating. And I've interviewed several people. One of the stars of Goodspeed Musicals who has a side hustle doing audiobooks, and another actor. And I've started to get more and more into the audiobook thing. What an incredible resource that who knew that we'd ever have that.
I love audiobooks. I think audiobooks are a great option. And what better way to, what better thing to accompany, your commute to work in the morning or what have you, or you're on a trip and you got a 4 or 5 hour drive. Audiobooks are perfect for that. And I find, again, that, it's sometimes based on the reader. If you get a really good reader of an audiobook, it's a great experience in itself, which enhances the book in a way that could be unexpected. Sometimes a reader can really make an audiobook work very, very well. So I love that. I sometimes am reading an ebook. I'm sometimes using a regular hardcover book. I'm sometimes listening to a book on my phone. I think we've got all these options available. Why not take advantage of them?
Yeah. So we're moving towards the holiday season, and what kind of events are up and coming Thanksgiving through Christmas at the Athenaeum?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because we at the Athenaeum right now are in a real party mood. And we actually, and on top of that, we're in a real wine drinking mood. We have coming up on December 3rd, we have a wine tasting at the Athenaeum that's going to be a great holiday party as well. And so we're looking forward to this. We think we're going to have a large crowd for this. We couldn't do it last year, of course, because of COVID. And this is something that the Athenaeum did in the past. We're reviving this experience because this is kind of one of the best parties in Westfield in the holidays. And so many people said, "Hey, when are you bringing that back?" And so we're doing it, and we're getting ready for that.
Local wineries or international wines?
Yeah, we're still looking right now for the company that will provide the wines for us. But what we're looking for is a company that's going to provide a real nice selection, different countries, different vintages, white and red, a real nice selection. So I think people will be able to really enjoy a nice selection of wines and enjoy the holiday crowd, get to see friends and everything. So I think it should be a great event.
Do you guys decorate the Athenaeum for the holidays?
Oh, yeah. We'll have it all decorated up. And we have a new exhibit that's opening up, which is really, we're calling it Untold Stories, but really it's kind of a Treasures of the Athenaeum from our art collection. I think a lot of people don't realize the Athenaeum has a really nice art collection going back to the early 1800s. We really have 2 centuries of art by various Westfield artists or artists from the region that are part of our collection. We pulled out a selection of the best paintings from that collection, and that exhibit's going to be part of. It's going to be there for the wine tasting. People will be able to see it there, or people could come in whenever they want to go to the library. They can go see the exhibit. So we're really excited about that.
And one of the things you had on Facebook, rolling through all the messaging, was that you're providing help for tech help for people that don't know how to use their tablets or their phones.
Right.
That's just a regular program and service.
Yeah. That's one thing that, again, a lot of people don't realize this, but librarians, the modern day librarian, the old stereotype of the librarian is just gone. They're just, I don't know any librarians that fit the old stereotype. Most librarians today are very, very tech savvy. And so the library is a real resource. If you're having trouble, accessing ebooks, or you need help with computer, doing something on the computer, maybe a resume or something like that, the librarians are very, very knowledgeable about that sort of thing. They can usually walk you through almost anything you need to do.
That's fantastic. So, all this information is available online.
Yes. Yes, yes. You just go to westath.org, WESTATH, which is, of course, short for Westfield Athenaeum, and then .org. And I really recommend people to check out our website regularly, because we list all those programs we were talking about earlier that we're doing almost every day. Are all listed on the website. So I always say to people, check it once a week, find out what's going on, so you don't miss something that you would really like to take part in.
Now, you just said that your library and the librarians are not like the librarians of yesteryear. And the librarians of yesteryear were part of a musical called The Music Man, which is about to reopen on Broadway.
Yes.
With that famous song "Marian the Librarian."
Yeah.
And Hugh Jackman,
which is a perfect example of the stereotype.
Yeah.
I mean, that song plays off the stereotype. So
exactly.
so
And Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster are in rehearsal for that now, and it opens in the beginning of the holiday season. So Broadway is back up and running. Have you been to New York to go to the opera or the ballet?
Yes. I went into to the Metropolitan a few weeks ago and really enjoyed the production there of a brand new opera, "Fire Shut Up in My Bones," by a great, an African American composer who is probably known to some people through the films of Spike Lee, because he composed the music for Spike Lee.
Yeah, it's Terrence Blanchard.
Terrence Blanchard,
the
yes.
trumpeter.
Yeah.
He's actually performing in this new arts center in Northampton or in Florence called Bombyx.
Oh, that's great.
It coming up in November. People should check that out. But
Well, and he did a wonderful job of this opera. He put together a really compelling opera with interesting music. I think this is, I really enjoyed the experience there, and it was nice. It was so nice to get back and be able to see an opera again.
I'm just saying, I don't get to go to the Met very often, but whether I like the Met or not is irrelevant. But going to the Metropolitan, seeing the chandeliers go up and
Yes.
everything, and
Yes.
people hobnobbing in the grand tier, and having champagne and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. It's quite an experience. What was it like to go back to the Met after not being able to go for almost 2 years?
Oh, I think the atmosphere was electric. I think everybody was just like me. They felt like, oh, it's so good to be back. And the night I went, it was a really nice weather and everything. The crowd was really a great crowd. And I'll say to people, if you've never had the experience, whether you're into opera that much or not, if you've never had the experience of going to the Met, you've got to do that once. It needs to be on your bucket list of things to do, because, as you say, the experience there is great. Just seeing the crowd, and a lot of people feel intimidated by how do I dress or whatever. I'd say don't even worry about that. The opera experience at the Met is something you just have to do, just to experience what that's like, and then also it's a great chance to hear a wonderful opera orchestra and some of the best singers in the world. You just can't beat that.
Yeah, no, it's the experience of going. I mean, I've been a couple of times. I mean, it's not my favorite opera company by any means, but the experience of going to the Metropolitan Opera House in New York, it's like going to Radio City in a different way. But there's something iconic about, let's say, sitting in Radio City and seeing the Rockettes and the lighting of the theater. And the same thing with the Metropolitan. It's just big and larger than life, and the fountains at Lincoln Center and all of that.
Right. Yeah, there is. Just when you arrive, the experience starts right there. As you're walking across that plaza on Lincoln's, right there at Lincoln Center, you start feeling the excitement of because everybody's gathering out there, waiting to go in to and there's other performances usually going on at the same time. Many times the ballet is having something, or there's other musical performances, but just as soon as you arrive at Lincoln Center, the atmosphere is just electric.
It's similar to Times Square. I mean, I lived in New York for several years, within blocks of Times Square, and there's something about seeing all the marquees at night lit up and all the people milling around. It really is an experience that you don't have in very many other cities. I mean, I don't get that vibe standing downtown in Springfield at 5 o'clock. There are no bright lights or anything like that. Or you sort of feel it when you're driving on 91 through downtown Hartford and it looks like a big city for a couple of minutes. But
Yeah.
there's the excitement of New York that can't be replicated
Right, right.
anywhere. But
There's
then we have
nothing like it.
we have
Yeah.
other things like we have fall foliage, and we have our other
Yes,
little New Englandy
yes,
things that they can't
Yes.
replicate.
Well,
there.
see, I think that's a great thing about living in Western Massachusetts is it's easy to get. I just drive down there. 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. You're in the city. That's one thing that's great about Western Mass. You can get to Boston to go to the Boston Symphony. You can go down to New York and take in the Metropolitan Opera or a Broadway musical, and and yet you can get out of the city and come back to Western Mass and enjoy the fall foliage.
Exactly, exactly. What are some of the exhibits coming? You're going to do the exhibit at the Athenaeum from your archives, so to speak, or
Yes.
is that what you call them? From
This-
your collection,
from our art collection. This is our permanent art collection. This is the artworks that are in this exhibit are part of our collection. The Athenaeum owns these. These paintings have come to us over the years, going back to the middle of the 19th century. And then we have art it's even older than that because, of course, families sometimes would give us paintings, portraits or family paintings, heirlooms, and so over the years we've collected these this wonderful artwork. And a lot of people don't realize one of the kind of the sub themes of this exhibit is that. There were a lot of really very good professional artists, most of them women, based in Westfield, going back to the mid-19th century, 150 years ago. Marianne Douglas Johnson was painting really great landscapes and portrait paintings in Westfield in the 1850s and 1860s. Then people like Bertha Bates, Edith Chadwick, Muriel Ritchie were artists in the early 20th century that were working, professional artists, professionally trained, doing incredible work here, and we've got all those in the exhibit. An artist from Springfield who painted a lot of portraits of people from Westfield, Irene Parmalee, who studied in Paris in the 1880s. We've got 2 of her portraits in the exhibit. So that was one of the things that really amazed me when I got to the Athenaeum and I started looking through this collection. There's all these really great artists that were here in Westfield over the decades.
So, did people come to the Athenaeum and say, I'm going to give you this piece of art over the years? Or I found this in the attic and we think it's valuable, and then you guys decide whether it's worth having? If somebody came to you today and said, I've got this Picasso, obviously you would jump on it because of the name of the artist.
Right,
But
right.
how do people come up and say, well, we're cleaning out our house and I bought this at an exhibit years ago. Do you want it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And what do you do? I mean, if it's something you want, obviously you would take it, but what if it's not? How do you gauge whether something's going to have value 100 years from now?
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question because it's something that people, call us all the time and say, "Oh, I have these paintings or I have artifacts that," and we have to evaluate those things. And we use certain criteria. Number one, we can't collect all American art or, art from Europe and this sort of thing. That's just beyond our scope. We concentrate on art primarily from Westfield and from the region as well, from Western Mass. And so most of the artists we have are Westfield or at least artists from around Westfield. So that's kind of our first criteria. Secondly, we use the criteria, is the art of some, quality level, what we call museum quality. And that's the way we got most of our paintings. Family members maybe had a portrait that was done many years ago. We check it out and find out that, maybe it was a prominent artist. For instance, we have a Chester Harding painting in the collection of a Westfield resident in the 19th century who had Chester Harding paint his portrait. Chester Harding was a major portraitist. He did congressmen, senators. He went to England in the 1820s and painted a lot of the British aristocracy. So he's a major name, and we have one of his paintings in the collection. A second way that we receive paintings is artists who've been active in Westfield many times were involved at the Athenaeum through the Rand Art Museum. At the museum that opened in 1927 when we built a new wing for the library, and it included an art gallery space, and there were several professional artists working at Westfield at that time, and they got really involved with that. And so their paintings came to the Athenaeum because they were involved with the Rand Art Museum. So those are the two ways that works of art come to us there. But yes, I just a couple of months ago, a person was cleaning out their house. They were moving from Westfield, retiring, and they were moving, I think they were moving to Florida, and they had two Muriel Ritchie paintings. Muriel Ritchie was one of those painters who was very active at the very beginning of the Rand Art Museum back in the 1920s and 1930s. She painted a lot of really great work. She worked also on the North Shore, did a lot of paintings of seascapes, Gloucester area and this sort of thing, but she lived in Westfield, painted a lot of scenes around here, and this person had two of her paintings that had kind of passed down through the family, and so they were donated. So just 2 months ago, we received paintings from an artist active in Westfield back in the 1920s and 1930s.
So you can have that exhibit. I'm sure now you're planning for stuff for the spring. So there'll be ongoing exhibits that will change going through the winter and spring.
Absolutely. We're really excited. The exhibit that's going to follow up with this exhibit is the art of Ruth Kerr. She's an artist who is living in East Hampton right now, and very, very active. She's been in galleries all over the United States. She's even got work in some museums in the Midwest. Because she was out in the Midwest for a period of her life. So she's known in Wisconsin especially. But she's been living in East Hampton for 20, 25 years now, and been very active on the art scene in this area, as well as galleries all over the United States. And so we're going to feature her work starting in February. That's going to be a really exciting show because her theme of her art is she addresses a lot of current issues that women face today, and does it in a very original way. And her paintings are large, very colorful. That's going to be a great exhibit. I'm really looking forward to that exhibit as well.
That's terrific. We're going to take a quick break here to acknowledge the underwriters that make Athenaeum Spotlight and On the Mark and all these other programs possible. If folks have missed what we've been chatting about today, or they want to go back and catch some of our other conversations on Athenaeum Spotlight, they're all archived on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Peter Coles is our chief engineer this morning. Guy McLean is sitting here. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we'll return after these messages, so don't go away.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org. Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Athenaeum Spotlight, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach with Guy McLean from the Westfield Athenaeum. And we've got a great guest with us this morning, Laura Radwell, the artist who's based here in the Valley. And I've known Laura for years, Guy, because before she went and became a full-time artist, she did a lot of marketing and communications. And one of her clients was the Mount Tom ski area. And every year around Thanksgiving or so, there'd be this big media party at Mount Tom that Laura would arrange. It had the best shrimp cocktail in the world and just lots of fun people. And that's where I got to know Laura. And her artwork is everywhere. And Laura, it's good to see you. It's been way too long.
Well, it's good to see you as well. And I love that memory that you just evoked of the shrimp cocktail. And thanks to my mother, who is a wonderful entertainer. And I wish I had more opportunities to do it now in this pandemic world.
Yeah, we need more holiday parties this year, don't you think?
Yes, I definitely think so. Yes.
So my first question, your work is on display in many venues around the area. Actually, I was in a couple of years ago in an accident and spent some time in rehab at the Sosin Center in Longmeadow, which is a sports rehab facility where they have several Laura Radwell works gracing the walls. And even in my haze, I can tell your work from other artists. My God, that's a Laura Radwell and all that. When did you turn to art full time?
Well, I'll just go back a little before that. I started my marketing business or my marketing activities as a follow-up to my position at Mount Tom. When I was marketing director there, I was really only working part-time because they couldn't afford a full-time marketing director. And one thing led to another, and I took on various clients. And in my roster of clients was Jewish Geriatric Services of Longmeadow, and they had many different organizations, and eventually I did work for several of them. So I knew some of the folks at the in interest in the positions, which allowed me to present my work to them, or they thought of me, and that's the way that all happened. And it was a great honor, certainly, and still is, to know that my work is hanging there.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I actually, as I was learning to walk again, there was a guy on their board, Jim Rosenthal, who's a sculptor, and he gave me a personal tour of the artwork that had been collected in the Sosin Center, which is a relatively new rehab facility where the art was carefully selected, and there's Laura's picture right in the framed by sunlight and all of that. It's just really a beautiful spot.
Yeah, well, sorry, Guy, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say kudos to Jim, and thanks to Jim. He's become a client, and a friend, and it was a very great opportunity to make connections like that.
So how did you get into, I mean, I knew you were doing the marketing, but you went and started to do the painting almost full time and all of that. Well, how did that happen?
Well, as a younger person, actually before I went to college, I felt the urge to be an artist. I felt the urge to paint, to work with color. And my parents didn't support that. They wanted me to get a liberal arts education. I ended up going to a women's school in Boston, and I had no art education to speak of, still to this day. I've attended several workshops, but that's about all. So I had this dream that I put on the back burner, and I did my various other activities and careers. And I was, as you know, in communications and marketing for like over 30 years. But during that period of time, what did happen was that computers started to be used for design. And I was hiring teams of people for my clients. I was hiring photographers and writers and designers. And I was watching what the designers were doing, and I was envious. I wanted to be doing that. I wanted to be working with color and shape and form and texture. And well, of course, in texture in those days, in two-dimensional design wasn't a big component, but that's what I wanted to do. And I started to teach myself the software. And eventually I, gathered up my courage and I said, I'm going to be not only the principal of this tiny little company, but I'm going to be the designer. And I ended up doing the design work for a couple of decades. And so that was very satisfying because I was able to immerse myself in, some of the things I love the most: color, shape, form. And so the painting dream was coming closer to the front burner because I figured when I stopped doing that business, I would have the time, hopefully, and the means to fulfill my dream, to be a painter. And so I've now had my studio in Cottage Street for about 10 years. And it witnessed the transition from being a communications professional to being a full-time artist, because I was doing both here for the first several years. So in a nutshell, that's how that happened. And one other thing that was critical was that I took a trip to Italy with a painter from Connecticut, and that opened the floodgates. I mean, at that point, I came back from Italy. I had been painting for 10 days. It was my first foray in years and years and years, and I just couldn't stop. And
well, that leads to a question I was very interested in. Your art is very, very unique and very, very distinctive, and has a very strong modern flair with kind of an abstract quality to it. I've been very curious. What are some of the artists that have influenced you? Because to me, you have a very distinct style, but it seems to like it connects into some of the artists that have been active in the last 50 years. And I'm just curious on who you think of as the artists who've influenced you.
Well, several different artists come to mind, and thank you for saying my style is unique. Sometimes I wonder what my style is, and I feel like I'm still on a journey of discovery to find out what is my voice exactly. But to answer your question, I saw a very large painting in a lobby of a medical facility in Boston by Luc Leestemaster. He just immediately, it spoke to me. This was something that provided inspiration for a number of years to portray the landscape with a looseness and an invitational abstractness and beautiful color and not exactly distinct forms. And so his style of landscape painting is one that I admire greatly. But I am an eclectic person, and I have eclectic taste. So my other influences are Gerhard Richter and Georgia O'Keeffe, and most of the Impressionists for different reasons, each, individually. I love Van Gogh. I love the movement in Van Gogh. I love Cézanne. I love the color palettes. I love Monet. I could go on, but they are mostly, I would say, not the classical painters, but more
the modern, yeah,
20th century, the moderns.
I find that interesting that you point out Gerhard Richter. A lot of the audience may not know who Gerhard Richter is. He's one of the most interesting German artists working today. I love his work. A couple of years ago in London, I saw a great show of his paintings. Really good. We had some. I saw some of his paintings in this show in London, and they were really, really quite distinctive. And I find it very interesting that you were influenced by Gerhard Richter. I think he's a very interesting artist, and it makes sense with your style. It makes complete sense there. I think that's a very interesting observation. But also, too, I'm surprised because I always think of when I see your work as being influenced by some of the abstract expression expressionists like Helen Frankenthaler, maybe, or Grace Hardigan? Do you feel some affinity for those abstract expressionists, those women who were working at that time?
Definitely for Helen Frankenthaler. I think a little bit less so for Grace Hardigan, because her structure, she's so much more structured, and the way I experience her work is tighter. But definitely for Helen Frankenthaler and the flow. And but also back to Gerhard Richter for a second, you know, what I admire in his work is the scope, you know, the broad scope of the different forms of the strokes and the overall impressions, and the looseness. I mean, I see a great deal of freedom in what he's doing. And, you know, for me, it also came to pass that this workshop I did in Italy that started this whole thing, I came home with little paintings that were, you know, 6 by 10 and 8 by 11. And very quickly I ran out of space. You know, the canvas was just, I needed a much larger space. And, you know, so some of these painters who are known for doing these large works are idols of mine, when you can fill a space like that. And of course, Helen Frankenthaler with pouring. I haven't tried pouring yet. And, you know, one thing I regret, although I try not to have regrets, is that I'm at a point in my life where I may not get to try everything I'd like to try. Yeah. Pouring might be one of those things.
Right. Yeah, I've always been intrigued by her technique of laying canvases on the floor and just kind of watering down the paint and letting that flow out, and but yet how she controls it, I think is very interesting. And it seems like you must work in a very similar way of kind of improvisatory to a certain extent, but controlled to a certain extent as well. Do you feel that's accurate?
I feel that somewhere on that spectrum, I can locate myself between being loose and being controlled. And I'll just describe, for instance, my process these days is to, and of course I don't work flat. I work on a big easel, which you might be able to see behind me. I put a big canvas on the easel, and I take oil sticks or crayons or pencil or charcoal, and I spontaneously put lines on the canvas. I make shapes. I just allow whatever I am feeling at that particular moment, which is comprised of, perhaps I listened to the news that morning, and perhaps I was really frustrated and upset, or a variety of things could have happened. And I just lay down some emotional layer of line, and I start with that, and then I apply the paint, and sometimes I adhere to those shapes, sometimes I respect them, sometimes I allow them to come through a little bit, you know, sometimes I allow them to dictate the painting. And I did a series of paintings just because I wanted to try something other than I had been doing for the first couple of years, and I mostly am painting landscape, as you have noted, abstract landscape. I started becoming interested in how the contours of the landscape and the contours of the human figure shared a lot in common. The beautiful contours of the anatomy and the contours of the hillsides and the intersections, the geometric intersections of land forms. And I did a series called Embodied Landscape, where I was trying to reflect the similarity in both of those things. And that one is more contained because there are definite shapes in that series of paintings. So
that's very interesting. So it seems like sometimes you work in a very controlled, you know, sometimes you go with more control, other times you open it up more. I think that's very interesting how you do that. Another question I have to bring this up because you're working in East Hampton, and it seems like, I think it's important to talk about the East Hampton art scene right now that seems to me very active, very interesting, and an artist that we are featuring at the Athenaeum here next spring in February and March is Ruth Kerr, who's also an East Hampton artist. And I think, looking at your work and looking at her work, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think it's quite interesting that both of you are doing very similar work because she also has kind of an improvised style, but yet there's times more control. Sometimes she goes more representational, sometimes more abstract. I find it interesting. Do you think this is? Do you think what you're doing and what Ruth Kerr is doing is kind of the East Hampton style that's developing, or it seems like there's a lot of variety, though, I have to say, in East Hampton, coming from East Hampton artists.
There are several different questions inherent in your
Yes.
what you just
I
said.
asked a bunch there. Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, the East Hampton art scene, I'll just talk about that first. The East Hampton art scene has been really thrilling to watch. And also it's of note that I became involved when I first had my communications business, because I was hired as a consultant to help a group of people who wanted to form a collaborative, which ended up being called the East Hampton City Arts. And so I did the consulting with the groups to, bring them through a series of exercises to arrive at the name. And then I separately proposed to do the branding, the visual identity, which I got to do. So I've been involved for all these years, and it's been really exciting to watch it grow and, to continue to be involved, but sort of on the other side of the equation. As far as I know Ruth's work, I haven't seen Ruth in a while, and I'm definitely looking forward, now that I know that her work will be at the Athenaeum, to coming to that exhibit. I would say there are some similarities in our work in terms of the looseness, the bold color, the use of color. I think our imaginations go in somewhat different directions, but her work is just astonishingly beautiful. I do not think that characterizes the work of the women in East Hampton necessarily. I think there is a broad range of styles. Some work is much more realistic, tighter, controlled. Some is extremely abstract. There are a few painters that I can think of now. Laura Talbot, whose work is sort of massively abstract and large scale. I think it's all over the place. But very exciting to be in this town at this time.
Well, and I think that's a good thing that artists in East Hampton are doing such a variety of things. But I was just kind of wondering if because it seems like a lot of East Hampton artists know each other and kind of share, and are parts of collaboratives and things like that. I just was wondering if artists were starting to influence one another. I was kind of thinking in terms of how, like, the abstract expressionists all hung out at the same, the Cedar Tavern in downtown Manhattan and shared ideas. And I just was wondering if that kind of thing was happening with East Hampton artists. Do you think that's the case?
Not, I wish that were the case. I read 9th Street Women, and I loved it, and I loved the description of the whole scene. And I was also kind of tickled to think that was taking place while I was a very wee little person, but in my lifetime. No, I don't think, not in my experience. I can only speak from my experience, but there's some socializing, so to speak, but I wish there were critiques groups, of peers that would come and critique, and that doesn't seem to be happening. At least I'm not part of any circle where that takes place. That's a wonderful thing to think about, organizing. I think right now we're all focused on Open Studios, which is coming in December in a few weeks, because we missed having that during the pandemic shutdown. But that's something to think about for the future, for sure.
And I think one thing that's really helpful about the East Hampton art scene is that there's so many great studio spaces. Your studio's in Cottage Street, Eastworks has studios. I think that also helps the situation in that there's a lot of places for artists to work in East Hampton. And you can be down the hall from somebody, and and that's a good way of sharing ideas too. Is just having your studio in the proximity of other artists there. So I think that's one thing that's really encouraged encouraged the East Hampton art scene. And I wonder why more cities don't do that, don't take some of these older buildings and turn them into art spaces, because that really encourages a great scene. And I think it's helped the economy of East Hampton. I think the reason restaurants and other things are happening is because of the art scene, the art studios there.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that there is a movement afoot. I mean, I've heard of many other cities in Massachusetts where this is happening. And I was part of an exhibit in Worcester at the Sprinkler Factory, also a former factory. I think there's a place in up on Route 2. There are a number of places, and also down in maybe south of Springfield, Agawam, or is a mill building. I'm not remembering the name exactly, but I love hearing about this. And the spaces are so conducive, and they're so inspirational, and there's something raw about them. And there's something also that feels good to have another purpose, to give another purpose to these buildings.
Yeah, and I think people forget. I think people forget that artists don't work. You think of an artist as working in isolation, but really, there's more of a collaborative experience to art than people realize. And I think that's one of the things that, if you want to encourage art, you have to set up the infrastructure for it.
Yeah.
I think it's an important part of it.
I think the growth in East Hampton, of the arts in East Hampton, and there's more than just visual arts that are starting to happen there. The city and the people seem to be behind the fact that, and appreciate the fact that it's making East Hampton a better place.
Right, and one of the reasons I'm really interested in this is because since I'm running the gallery, the Rand Art Gallery at the Athenaeum, I feel like Westfield should have more of the East Hampton. Why can't Westfield have this? And so that's one of the reasons I'm very interested in what's working successfully in other places, because I think we can bring that to Westfield as well. And I'm hoping the Athenaeum is one of those places where it happens.
Yeah, I mean, because Northampton, 25 years ago, when actually even longer, when I started at WFCR, Northampton was the center of cultural activity for Western Massachusetts. Springfield was sort of eclipsed, and everything was going on in Northampton, and that has shifted now to East Hampton, and it's starting to grow in Holyoke, and of course Shelburne Falls. And I think that the people in East Hampton are more appreciative and don't take the arts happening in East Hampton for granted the way perhaps people in Northampton took what was going on there for granted.
Yeah, and I don't know, how do you feel about that, Laura? Because it seemed like to me, I think that's a very good point. Northampton was the center of arts activities, and it seems like, I don't know if they priced themselves out of the market or what, but yeah, it did definitely shifted to East Hampton. I wonder, what your experience with that, what that was.
Well, I've been a resident of Northampton for a long time, shall we say, a very long time. And when I came in the 70s, when I first came to the Valley in the 70s, Northampton was depressed, and everything on the east side of King Street was bars for men. Women were not even allowed in. Fitzwillies used to be called Tom's Tavern. It was half the size. The character of the place was entirely different. So I watched this kind of, phenomenal change over the years where everything became very high end. So to your point, Guy, I think that things got a little bit out of hand. Things were priced out of the market. There was a feeling of elitism that I know that, a good part of the population was not so happy with. It was good that there was economic development, so to speak, in Northampton, but it wasn't an equitable kind of economic development. And I think what's so beautiful about what's gone on in East Hampton, and also starting to happen in Holyoke and hopefully many other places, is that East Hampton doesn't feel fancy yet. And it's been a decade of activity, and it's still East Hampton. It retains its natural, authentic character to a great degree. And I think there's an appeal to anything that comes across as authentic and affordable.
That's a
And
very good
I think
observation.
affordable is a part of it too, because Northampton, a lot of people have been priced out of Northampton.
Yeah.
Artists, entrepreneurs, and all of that. And sometimes, to me, Northampton feels like a theme park now for kind of chic. And East Hampton still has character and soul. And when I first came to the area, Northampton had soul and all of that. Just seems to have moved away.
Right. I think it's a very good observation. I think you're right. East Hampton has somehow kept that character that's very conducive to arts events and art activity. Yeah, I think it's a very good observation.
Laura, we only have a couple of minutes left. Do you have any exhibits up and coming in the next few months?
Well, I had 4 exhibits canceled during the pandemic, sad to say, and took a little bit of steam out of me. But I do have an open studio coming up the first weekend of December 4, 5, and 11. I will be in my studio. My studio is also open by appointment. If anyone wants to come at their convenience, I can meet anyone here. And my work can also be seen in Lenox at the Hoadley Gallery. And I am also represented in Newport, Rhode Island by Coastal Contemporary. And as far as other exhibits, nothing yet. I also just got a new puppy who's 4 months old, and that's taking a little bit of my creative time, but I'm sure that new things will arise. And I do have a painting and a juried show in Cambridge that's opening November 9th. I have been participating in some juried shows that have accepted me over the past year and a half. But
Can people find your work on social media or reach out to you through a website or Facebook and what have you?
Both. All of the above. I'm on Facebook under my name. I'm on Instagram under my name, Laura Radwell Art. And I have a website, lauraradwell.com. So yes.
Well, we'll have to
Thank you.
We'll have to talk to you. I'll put you on the spot and ask you, if you'd like to exhibit at the Athenaeum. See if we can get you on the schedule at the Athenaeum. I'd love to have a show of your art there. That would be great.
I would be honored to be there. Yes, I would
And
absolutely.
I will definitely be there if Laura helps cater the opening night party.
Okay. Yes.
I'll
yes.
definitely
We
be
like
I
to
have to bring the shrimp. Yeah.
Bring the shrimp.
Yes,
Laura.
we love to have receptions for opening art shows and everything. So yes, I'm looking forward to the shrimp. That should be great. So yeah, we'll have to talk about that and get you on the schedule.
Well,
Thank you,
we're out of time, folks. We've been chatting with Laura Radwell, the artist whose studios are in East Hampton, and here on Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLean. I'm Mark Auerbach, and Peter Coles has been our chief engineer today. If you've missed a part of today's program or you want to replay it, you'll find it on YouTube under WSKB Community Radio. You've been watching or listening to Athenaeum Spotlight on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 or Southwick Community Programming, which is brand new, or 89.5 FM WSKB. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We're going to leave you today with a little bit of music from Duke Ellington's ballet, The River. We'll see you soon.